Hello, everyone. You are going to have a presentation on the introduction to project management. And in this presentation, we are going to look at the definition of project management. We'll explain why project management is very important. And then we'll also explain how projects differ from operations and programs. And then we'll look at the different components or processes of project management and how project management relates to general and organizational goals. So a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or a result. So this actually underscores the fact that a project has to have a time limit. And that's why we're using the word temporary in there. And then it is an activity that must have an output. The output can be a product, it can be a service, or a change, a result. Okay, there should be a result that should be obtained. So that means that it has a start and an end point with a defined area of operation. That is to say that it has a specific scope, and then you're going to use resources that we can also term as inputs. So that means for a project to be initiated, there should be a need that has to be met, okay? Or there should be a problem that should be solved. In other words, we can say that there's a situation A that needs to be improved, okay? The situation A that needs to be improved. So you need to have situation A improving to situation B, which is much more better. So there is an existing situation that you want to change. Okay, so you need to improve that situation and create something new, and that new something can be it can be a product, or it can be a service that you're providing, or it could be you want people to change their behavior. So it could be that you want to have a behavior change that you want to see. So that means that you want to influence people's way of life by implementing a project. So the key things that we have noticed from the definition, one is that there should be a product or a service, and that means that has to be unique. Each product or each project delivers its own output, or what we can call deliverables, and requires unique requirements or inputs that makes it actually different from others. Projects are implemented through working with different stakeholders. So you sit down and plan and then implement the project in what we call an adaptive and iterative manner. This is because as you implement the program, there are new things that you learn that you may need to change as the project is ongoing. So we have what we call progressive collaboration. You work with different stakeholders to make sure that the project is actually successful. The projects cannot be without any risks. There is challenges and risks that you face when implementing projects. So there is a degree of uncertainty about the success or failures on the progression of certain projects. And then the projects have what you call stakeholders. these are people who have interest in the project, because they may in one way or the other be affected by the project. So they include sponsors, the customers, the team members, and then the suppliers, and many others. It could include also regulatory authorities, local communities, and things like that. So projects have a time limit. That means that they have a defined end date. Okay, they are temporary. They don't they don't continue forever. We can have projects of 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 4 years, and things like that. But definitely there is a time frame to projects. Whereas operations are continuous, they are ongoing throughout, and they don't have an end date. And then projects create unique products or services or results, whereas operations basically gives you standardized outputs. Okay, you have ongoing activities that are repeated over and over, and then give you defined products or standards for the products that you actually release. So that's the difference between projects and operations. Operations are continuous, they are always ongoing, and they are repetitive. You do the same thing over and over again, such that you can produce a given product with given minimum standards. So projects are driven by change and innovations, whereas operations are driven by stability and efficiency. In operations, you want to have standard operating procedures. One thing is to be produced in a certain way, such that you don't get disturbances and you don't get issues to do with instability or inefficiency. You want resources to be used optimally over and over again. Whereas with projects, if there are changes within where the projects are being, or the environmental changes that can impact on projects, that means that project managers have to devise ways of actually adapting their projects to the changing environment. That means changes and innovations are part of projects. And then projects require project management skills and processes, whereas with the operations, you need to get what you call operational management skills and processes. So the other component that we need to distinguish is the component of what programs are. Okay, we have looked at what projects are. We have looked at what operations are. Now we need to look at what programs are. Now with programs, basically you just need to understand that a program is a broader endeavor that actually encompasses more projects. So under the program, you have many projects. Okay, so that means that if you have a program manager and a project manager, that means that the program manager is higher in hierarchy in terms of roles and responsibilities compared to the project manager. Okay, so still on the project side, you have the unique components of the project. There is a time limit, there is a unique product that you have, and then you have the defined scope of the products that and the products and services that you produce. And then on the program, we have said that this is it's much more broader than projects, or we can say a program has multiple projects. So with programs, you have continuous and they are continuous and ongoing until the change sustains its stance in the market. So in the business world, you may initiate a broader program, And then that broader program has all these activities which we can call project activities ongoing. That means that these projects have to keep moving as you have these deliverables actually being made until a point where you have continuity of programs, where you have a number of outputs at the end of the financial year. So actually, you don't look at programs in a shorter perspective, but you look at a program in a much more longer time frame. And this in the business world is looked at in terms of financial years. So you plan on a yearly basis. So you have a greater scope in relation to issues to do with financial management, revenue streams, and then also cost management. Okay, basically, what drives programs are what the organizational strategies. So organizational strategies directly influence the programs that are undertaken by the organization. Okay, and this obviously means that the top management is the one responsible for making decisions on programs. Whereas programs, the decisions can be made by the mid-level managers. Okay, so the overall concept here is that programs are broader and they are managed by organization senior leaders, and then they can be evaluated based on financial years and in terms of financial gains and or what you can call revenue streams. Project scope. At the start of a project, you need to understand everything that will be undertaken in the project. So you need to know what activities will have to be undertaken. What is the sum of all the work that is needed such that a given project, product, or service or result is delivered. Okay, so usually in this case, you don't want to start a project and then you don't give the person the project scope, because the project scope determines how long the project will take, what resources will actually be needed in terms of human resource, in terms of financial resources, in terms of even the duration, like I said. Okay, for example, if you want to develop an app, for example, so university developed an app. In that app, there are basic things that we needed to have in the app. So the developer had to know this from the start. So we give the developer of the app the scope. So we want an app where our students will be able to log in and access their transcript, their financial resources. They should be able to participate in what we call forum discussion and all the things. So we list them. So basically list the characteristics of the app such that the developer can understand what they really need to know to start the project. And then from there, they can now tell you that for me to do all this, you need to give me $1,000. And then the period will be 2 months. 2 months I will deliver the app. Okay, so that is the importance of the project scope. This has to be documented. You have to write this down. It's not a matter of having a meeting and then say, okay, so you are a developer, I want you to develop an app ABCD. If you don't write this down, then you'll have problems, because along the way, information will be lost, and then you will have excuses here and there, either from the side of the person contracting or from the contractor. You get a lot of challenges without
a critical aspect of project like in his design, what is including and excludes.
Okay, so you need to document this. You have what you call the scope statement. That means that you need to outline the objectives of the project, the deliverables, the boundaries, assumption, constraints, and acceptance criteria. Okay, so that is very, 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 very key. You can use a number of tools to develop this scope statement. Okay, you can use what we call the work breakdown structure, which is that you can break down the project into smaller parts that actually indicate what has to be delivered at any particular time, so that all of you are on the same page. This is very, very important because along the way, resources may have to be adjusted. Someone will say, I didn't know that we needed to do this. And then for us to do it, we need to get more money for us to do it. So that becomes a challenge because you had not budgeted it before. So having what we call a work breakdown structure can enable you to break down these small manageable components of the whole project, such that you have a structural understanding or framework that you will base on to say that the project is being implemented according to plan. Okay, so this is actually very important also in visualization. Okay, visualization allows people to understand complex information in a simple way. Instead of you writing a lot of paragraphs, step 1, we shall do this. By second month, we should do this. People have less time to read and understand issues. So that means that the more you simplify it, the better. So simplify it into small components, agree, okay? Agree on the things that you, on this scope. After agreeing on this scope, they now have to sign that they have actually understood the magnitude of the work and they are willing to do it with the resources, within the resources provided. And then they now can start. When they start, which is point 5, controlling the scope. When they start, you need to make sure that they keep within the set guidelines. Okay, in terms of expenditure, in terms of duration, in terms of whatever, it depends on the nature of the project that you're having. You will have to make sure that everything is within the resources that you have set forward. Another concept is what we call scope creep and change requests. Assuming, for example, we want the app for the university. So along the way, we discover that we did not include something that is actually very important in the app. Then we tell this developer, please, can you include it? Now, when you do that, that is what we call scope creep. You did not agree on this thing, but now you're including it. So you are making the work more cumbersome, but you are not including resources. You're not taking into the fact that you need more resources to accomplish what you had agreed upon. Okay, so that is what we call scope creep. So you need to manage it properly. That means that don't rush. Don't take your time. First, look at what is that I need. Okay, if you're going to implement a health program, brainstorm. do the assessments, analyze, reflect, do all these things, then come up with the overall plan of how the project will be implemented. And then you get the implementing partner to do that. Or if it is you to implement the program, then or the project, please do that. But along the way, if you get any issues that will increase the scope of the project, then one of the things that you might need to consider is to communicate early in a clear manner to the key stakeholders who will be affected by the project. Usually, the project delivery has looks at three major things: the quality of the work, whether it is a product or service, the cost issues, and then the time. These are usually limiting issues. So you need to make sure that the three, the quality, the cost, and the scheduling, which is basically the time, is within the parameters that the stakeholders will actually be satisfied with. Okay. So to minimize project scope creep, you need to make sure that you write the project scope statement clearly at the start of the project, and then you communicate the scope statement to all stakeholders. And then if there are any changes that you want to bring into the project, remember we say that the project is driven by change and innovation. Okay, so if along the project you want to make changes, then you need to get the appropriate approvals. And these have to be documented, and all the changes have to be tracked. What do we mean by tracking all the changes to the scope? Let me ask a question. If we say that all the changes have to be tracked, what do we mean? Who can help us? Hey, people are just listening and you... Who's going to help us with that? Tracking all the changes, what does it mean? Simon Cholmanya.
Yes.
Yes. Tracking means what?
Tracking mean like you assessed. You assess maybe okay, you assess and you write down all changes that may have influence in the project, and you relate them with the project. If the positive and the negative impact of them, and then you write. And then after writing, you compare whether they can fit within the project, and also you see which is a possible way, like you can be able to reduce maybe some of the risks, and also you can also see the advantage part. How can they really help the project? Because you have tracked them already. You have tracked them, you have documented them into the list, and then you come up with the possible plan. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, so that has to be undertaken. What is very important is that you don't just erase what the scope was initially, and then you put the new one. Leave the old one there, adjust the new one. Okay, such that you have a clear follow-up on the things that have the changes that have been made across the project duration. You don't need to erase, keep the first one, and then create a second one that you have modified, so that you have a record of both. That is what we mean by tracking all the changes. You need to make sure you don't lose any information. Okay, yeah. So now project creep has to be minimized because it causes a lot of disruption, and we need to communicate clearly from the start of the project what is the project scope. So you need to write a clear project statement, communicate this to all the key stakeholders such that they understand and actually buy in, and then now put in plan the control measures that you undertake to evaluate whether any changes need to be made and how the approvals can be obtained. Document and track all the changes. This is very, very key. So now we have been talking about a project. Now, how do you manage a project? You manage a project when you apply knowledge, skills, and tools and techniques to be able to plan, execute, and monitor and close programs. Okay, so that is the definition of what we call project management. That means you need to have given knowledge, you need to have knowledge, you need to have skills, you need to know what tools to use and what techniques to apply in order to execute the projects in a proper way. And then we have what we call project management office, which is basically looking at projects within an organization. Remember, we said that we have what we call programs. Under programs, we have projects. But these programs are actually owned by an organization. So, for example, in the context of NGOs, you have an NGO which has many programs. And then under each program, they have what you call projects. Okay. Now, within an organization, you can have what you call a project management office, which is basically a department within an organization that makes sure that the standards of project management are defined and actually maintained. So that means that the project management office provides support to project managers by giving them guidance, documentation, tools, templates, training, and oversight. So they act as what you can call people who are able to see what might happen so that they can avoid risks. And then also they act as people who make sure that actually the projects are within the costs, the set quality, and then also the time. So they are basically, I could say they're like police. They're policing the project managers to make sure that they are doing their work in the right way. So this is basically an office or a department where we have a group of people who are overseeing all these other projects and being able to see. In our context, we can say the offices in Juba are basically what we call project management office, because the offices in Juba are the ones that do the budgeting, do the allocations, sometimes they recruit staff and then things like that. So what they do in Juba, in the NGO setting currently in South Sudan, is what you call project management office. So they provide the field officers with the training. They tell the field officers that, you see, your budget is about to end. If you're reporting, use this template. If you're entering data, use this program. Okay, they also help in writing reports. They provide guidance here and there. So that is what we call the project management office. So they do a lot of things. They make sure that they support the field office with the consultation and administrative support. Okay, they help in making sure that the right procedures, guidelines, and policies are followed. These compliance issues, and then they help in managing and executing projects. And then they therefore actually assign project managers and they assign project managers to resources to be able to manage the projects. So the three main components of project management are knowledge. You need to have knowledge. Remember, I said you need to have knowledge, skills, and be able to use certain tools and techniques. So here we're talking about knowledge. So you, throughout this presentation, you will gain knowledge on these 10 areas: integration, scope, scheduling, cost, quality, resource, communications, risks, procurement, and stakeholder management. These are the areas that you will have knowledge on, okay, in regards to project management. And then the processes. We have what you call the project cycle, which includes initiating, plan, executing, and then monitoring and closing projects. So you know these actually fall under what we call project management processes that you will also look at. We shall look at all these step by step: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and closing a project. And then the last component is what we call understanding project management interdependencies. This is to let you know that each step of the project implementation does not only rely on its own. They depend on one another. Okay, so the project areas and the process groups depend on one another. So there is a relationship and interaction between those. Okay. So if you want to get the visualization of how this interdependence happens, then you can use what we call a matrix. A matrix shows you how the knowledge area relates to each process group. Okay. So you basically need to know the fact that a project matrix shows you how a project process group relates to each knowledge area. Okay. So project management is quite different from the usual management that you perhaps know that you practice in your offices. Project management is a specialized form of general management that you apply to projects. It has ways in which it differs from general management. Project management focuses on specific objectives with a defined scope, time, and budget. And then projects are actually more flexible, and it is easier to change, to effect change in projects than in general management. In general management, you want things should be done consistently in the same manner. You basically have to follow the procedures and processes or standards. But with project management, there is more room for flexibility and being adaptable. And then project management involves more collaboration and communication with diverse stakeholders. It's just like here, if we have a project, a health project in a given community, when we want to make changes, we need to talk to the key stakeholders. But if, for example, we are here at the university, the administration sits and say the exams will be done 2 weeks earlier than what is in the academic calendar. That's an internal decision that has been made and basically communicate to the students. So we don't need to go and tell the ministry we want to have the exams done 2 weeks earlier. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. So that means that for you, in projects, you have more you have more communication to make than in general management, which we practice in the usual organizations that we work in. So project management, still with the management concepts, we have what we call strategic management, which is basically aligning the project objectives with the organizational vision and mission, goals, and strategies. That means that, for example, if you have a bigger organization, the organization its interest would be in making sure that the well-being of a given population X is improved through implementing health programs, and that is their mission. So along the way, they have projects, and those projects help in pushing forward that vision. Okay, so this is to say that projects should have a way in which they reflect the organization mission and vision. Okay, and then in the same way, the organizational behavior culture also influences members or team members in a given project. These are also very important concepts that you need to note. So organizational culture, organizational structure, organizational change, these are things that happen at organizational level, but still have an impact on projects that are being implemented. Okay, so this also relates to what I've just explained, that project management does not occur in isolation, but it's basically part of the larger organization that supports this vision and mission. And therefore, project management integrates issues to do with organizational culture, organizational goals, organizational vision, organizational goals, organizational strategies. Okay, so it is very important if, for example, you're going to compete for any grants, make sure that the projects that you're writing reflect the mission and vision of the organization. Okay, so it is very, very important that project management is actually, it forms a larger part of the organizational goals and strategies. And therefore, it is very important to deliver value to the organization and also to the key stakeholders. And then also making sure that projects meet the desired performance indicators as the organization expects. And then project management in an overall organization is very important, because it is actually, if projects are not happening in an organization, then the organization is not moving forward. So that means that project management is very key, because it drives the organization, helps in improving efficiency, improving service delivery, creating innovations and competition, and supporting growth. As a project manager, you will have a lot of roles to do, including making decisions, changing strategies, engaging stakeholders, making sure that you run the projects very well, minimizing risk, and then also evaluating the portfolio. So the skills that you need: leadership, communication, scheduling, management, and managing expenses. As you study project management, you have a lot of options to advance your careers. You can become a project coordinator, project manager, and then program manager, portfolio manager, or program director. So you have a lot of areas to choose from. Okay, so we have come to the end of our first presentation. If you have any questions, you can let me know.